smart money, out of home being a performance channel. We're sort of gonna anchor this conversation around 3 points. Is out of home establishing itself as a performance channel? What are the expectations of marketeers as we continue to develop audience metrics, analytics, etc., to support performance? And as an industry, what can we all do collectively to try and attract additional share, make the process as easy as possible? So let's get straight into things. Jim, maybe if I can come to you first. Has out of home now established itself as a performance channel, or is there still work to do there?
So permission to be provocative, I would say, right? Here's what I will say. Look at what the performance mediums are doing as they try to capture IRL opportunities. And, one of the things that we've been focusing at Outfront is really changing the narrative from legacy out of home to in real life media. And I think if you look at what the digital companies who have historically been labeled as performance, making a move towards in real life moments. And that could be, look what's happening with World Cup. Look what's happening with what Pinterest is doing. TikTok's out of phone campaign. There's numerous examples. And so I think, what it's signaling is that there is no longer a distinction between performance and brand, and they are complements to one another. And you can't have performance without brand, nor can you have brand without performance, without measurability, without accountability. So I think there's a real blend.
Sure. And Tal, from your side of things, maybe from more of an ad tech side of things, has out of home earned the right to be in the performance conversation?
Yeah, well, I think it got there only recently. Now with all the data layers, the attribution, the fact that you can plan a campaign across all channels and then understand where out of home plays a role, and not necessarily by itself, right? So you can look at it in a more holistic way and then understand where out of home will actually push more people into physical stores, more people into downloading an app, more people into even watching Netflix when they get home, right? So I think absolutely out of home is becoming more and more on the performance side, but I think CMOs should really think about it smartly and build it in a more holistic way and not a separate layer.
Okay, thank you. And David, I guess sort of building on from that, how have we seen the expectation? How are we managing our own expectations of how out of home can deliver in the performance side of things? And I guess how have we seen clients and agencies evolve what they're looking for?
So first of all, thank you guys. Good to see you. I think we maybe are asking the wrong question, because it feels to me like brand marketers or performance marketers are starting to catch up to what out of home is actually doing, right? It's always been a performance-based media. The issue was we didn't have the empirical data to actually back that up. But the guy who owned the local pizza joint, who put up a billboard or a poster near his store and then took it down and saw traffic decline, knew instinctively, the billboard matters to me, that out of home matters to me. And I think now we've gotten to a point where we have the data and the evidence that enables us to provide back to clients measurement. But here's what I think is starting to scare me a little bit. So to your point, be a little provocative. I worry we're going to get down the path where everything is performance led. And let's not forget that the superpower of out of home is its ability to reach at broadcast scale, right? And it does have a trust factor. It does have the real life expectation of it. But if we go down just a performance-based approach, I think we're going to actually dilute the value of it, and marketers are going to only expect the last click, the last opportunity, and doing a detriment to themselves by not creating more in the upper funnel. So I think our view is very much this is still an upper funnel And now it's a mid-funnel because we have the research available to help quantify it for clients.
Yeah. And to that point, do you think that the sector is guilty sometimes of saying out of home can do everything? We want to be a sort of yes solution to upper funnel branding, performance metrics, the more data and analytics that we have at our fingertips. Are we guilty of that? Should we focus on the strengths more?
Well, I think all mediums do that, right? Even the performance mediums say that they're great at building brand. And so, I love what David said, where, over measurability dilutes the conversation, dilutes the overarching goal of what you're trying to do. I think most marketers instinctively know the power of out of home and what IRL experiences mean to a brand. Brands win in the real world. Brands don't necessarily win on a screen. And so finding a way to capture those cultural moments in a brand-friendly environment, instinctively marketers know that work. I think what marketers, let's get right down to it, what they fear more than anything is the call from the CFO that says, defend this budget. Sure. And that's where we need to do a better job of giving them the ammunition so that they can trust the intuition that they have as marketers to continue to invest in the medium at an even greater rate than they are today.
Yeah, sure. And when outcomes-based solutions we hear a lot about, and I think Out of Home would love to continue to evolve in demonstrating its delivery against outcomes-based solutions, whether that's attribution, footfall, audience reach, whatever the client's metric might be. And we see that tangibly demonstrated and effectively researched in digital and online with click-through and attribution, etc. How are we, or how are you guys in your businesses, maybe Tal, how are we becoming more outcomes-based in terms of what we can deliver and demonstrate?
So, in the past 2 years or 3 years, everybody's saying the word outcome. It's like every conversation needs to have at least 3 times AI and 7 times outcome. But I think at the end of the day, it does everything that we're doing in marketing. I've been doing marketing for 30 years. It's the exact same thing. You're deploying marketing investment, and you expect outcome. You expect value, right? Now, what is the value, right? We've seen amazing campaigns of Uber. Their outcome is more app engagement. We've seen amazing campaign with Lululemon. Their metrics are getting people back into the stores. Defining outcomes is really based on the specific campaign and on the supporting system around it, right? I don't think if I were a marketer of whatever brand, I would not just buy TikTok or Instagram or out of home. I would do it holistically. How do I build this to drive people towards the goal that I'm focusing on, right? So outcome was always the goal. I think now with all the technologies that we have, we can actually prove those outcomes. We can actually send the CMO to the CFO and say, see, that actually works, right? And I think that's what drives out of home into becoming a very legitimate and I think an even bigger part of the media mix.
I think too, we've got to understand from our client's perspective, who's asking the question? Because I think the outcomes for a brand marketer are going to be much different within the same company for that performance team, right? And the CFO is going to have inherently different questions as well. And I think we use this elixir or salve of outcomes as, a one-stop shop, and it really isn't, because the application of that for the brand marketer is going to look very different than it may look for the performance team or for the CMO. So I think it's incumbent upon both us and client to start to figure out what are we meaning when we say this so that we can put together the right solutions for them.
What can we do better in this space? My observations are that there's some brilliant work, research, demonstrations of out-of-home outcomes. Can there be more collaboration from the sector? Can there be a different lens on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we're very focused on is making sure that we have a portfolio of supporting partners, of which we've got a couple on stage here, because there's there's expertise that we don't have. There's client expertise that you have at billups, that in being close to those clients with Perion, obviously on the ad technology side and ad serving side, that we have to rely on. So I think that's one, starting there internally within the industry, having a good portfolio of partners. But I think what we can be doing differently is, let's stop thinking about it as a specialist bucket of just out of home, and think about it in the broader omni-channel ecosystem and how that fits in with what a marketer is ultimately trying to achieve. And that much of that is technology reliant, and having that an enabler of being able to do it. But I also do think it starts with us, and the narrative that we tell, and moving away from that legacy mindset and the even the legacy measurement towards a much more modern media approach. And that for us starts with just trying to move the narrative from classic out of home into IRL as a medium. The out of home space is the world's largest IRL platform. And it is unmissable, unskippable, trusted, inherently brand safe, and we need to take better advantage of that as an industry.
David, we have buy side, we have technology, and we have supply side on stage. But across the sector, sort of observations on how we can best try and future-proof ourselves moving forward.
I mean, the one thing that I come to is universal currency, right? I think that how we plan it in the U.S. versus how we plan it in Europe versus the methodology that's being applied in Spain or not applied in parts of APAC hinders the media overall. I think it hinders it for clients who want some assurity of what they're going to market for. I think it hinders on the measurement side of it. I think that standardization, was Nick said it the other day, we've sent people to the moon again, so can't we figure this out? It would seem pretty easy. And given the prevalence of mobile signal available today, we should be able to figure this out.
Moving away from measurement and effectiveness, I guess specifically, how do we think about growing out of home share? How do we think about we've got access to the most amount of data, the most amount of insights that we've ever had. The investment from all parties here has made out of home appear to be demonstrated as being more efficient. But I love the mentality of simplicity brings order to complexity. How do we make it easier for clients, brands, advertisers to spend in the out-of-home sector whilst optimizing all of the data that we have? Tal?
Yeah, so, we've been spending, so we bought Hivestack 3 years ago. Ever since then, we've been spending a lot of time with advertisers and with our partners, understanding what else can we do to make advertisers understand that this is a winning format that can drive real outcomes. And I think it all goes back into the data, right? Like, how much can I prove that things happen because of that, right? Different advertisers were using different techniques, different data layers. We're also seeing that using our DCO capabilities is really driving a lot of uplift in performance. So, we've shown we have a lot of case studies where companies, again, like Uber, are getting different creative based on different weathers, different traffic condition, different, if it's foggy, if it's specific events. Using dynamic creative, dynamic parameters can really push more budgets towards out of home because it becomes a really dynamic environment. It's not like the static billboards with glue and paper. That becomes a really dynamic environment.
Is innovation simplifying things or complicating things, David?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think we've certainly made it easier to buy with all of the workflow automation that is out there today. I think that, I don't know if this is fair to say or not, but my gut tells me that clients don't necessarily want a self-serve approach to this. They hit a level of complexity in their business and it becomes difficult to manage, and they don't necessarily have the expertise. So platform technology has certainly made it easier for expert specialists in the marketplace to do it faster and quicker. AI is doing the same thing for us as well. But the one thing I would also say is don't ever underestimate the power of the creativity of the media. Like, there are agencies that I've talked to, and when they go into a pitch, if they can't get the idea right on a billboard, they don't have an idea. And I love that idea that if I can't get it done in 7 words or less, and consumers are just going to get it, then they don't have a winning idea that they can go to market with. So the power of out-of-home, I think, is much broader than just the poster that you see on the street. And I agree, digital has made it a lot easier. It's given us speed and flexibility with regards to budgets. We can be much more transactional in nature because we don't have to, wait 30 days to post something or get it printed. It can just go up tomorrow. And I think that's marvelous. The last thing I would say is, we've got to stop trying to make it, you asked the question earlier. I mean, it's a little bit of brand, it's a little bit of commerce, it's a little bit of, we need to know what it is going in and then build a campaign around and specifically for that. Because if we're trying to be all things to all people, we're really nothing to anybody.
I just wanted to add, taking the friction out of the process is the most important thing, because what native digital has been able to do is just make it a really easy default. A few keystrokes and you're done and you can go home for the day. One of the challenges with IRL media, it's a human medium and it requires humans. There's some innate insight that only humans can convey. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, everybody's talking about the heat here at Cannes. You have to experience it IRL. You can't text home and say how hot it is for people to understand that everybody is sweating profusely. And it's just, those are the IRL moments that I think that's what the human element brings to it. Now, we all have to do a better job of taking the friction out of the process, and we're all working hard to do that, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but I do think that we've made a lot of progress in getting on par with some of the other mediums.
Yeah, sure. And how do we move share on out-of-home share? We've seen some stats at the World Out-of-Home Conference. There's some APAC markets, Australia in particular, where the out-of-home share, the digital share of things is moving on exponentially. How do we see that success? How do we take that to...
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it does come down to trust, and trust that, I'm going to buy this medium and it is going to deliver on the goals, the outcomes, whatever that KPI is. Once again, incumbent upon us to be able to provide measurement points or some measurable impact that can defend and enforce the trust. And so I think, there is still a lot of legacy thinking on the buy side of, I'm not sure if it worked. So burden on us to remove that.
Tal, what's preventing out-of-home from securing a larger share? Back to the point that we've never seen more investment in proving out-of-home. We're seeing lots of markets engage it a bit more, but we're seeing some of the big legacy markets, maybe the US, the UK, good examples, still at a hovering sort of 5% or below share. How do we move things on? What's going to be the biggest trigger to allow us to compete with some of the other channels?
Wow, that's how much is it? The $4 billion question? It's a big question. Listen, I think out-of-home has been around for 190 years, which is, we found photos of out-of-home 190 years ago in the US. The most known media, and for some reason, people are getting excited by the new things, not necessarily about the things that would actually work the best. So it's a lot about education. Educating, I think CMOs understand the power of out-of-home. I think where they need to translate that into a CFO language, we will need to give them more tools to show how that actually works so they can shift more money into out-of-home.
David, the one single thing maybe, or maybe the one or two things that are going to most help us accelerate growth?
I think we are shitty marketers when it comes to ourselves. I mean,
Well said.
I think the industry should have drones flying over Cannes and look at all the digital and look at all the formats. Look at the, for those of you who saw it last night, Cargo did that, drone show it was beautiful. I don't know what it was selling, but it was beautiful. And I think we ought to package that all up and go out to CMOs, not to agencies, but to CMOs and start talking about that. And we can get into the specifics of how we'll measure it and what the uplift is going to be and how it amplifies the performance of literally every other media. But I think if we're not out there actively marketing ourselves and the industry, if we're all sort of trying to do this by ourselves, we're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, do you think we challenge other media strong enough, Jim? Do you think we go up against the broadcast TV, the digital sectors in a confident enough way?
No, I think David's spot on. As an industry, we're a very fragmented industry with, again, back to physical media, non-standard formats. There's a lot of complexity to it, lack of common currency. Go down the list. So we've, by default, left it very complicated. And as part of that, we haven't had unified messaging. So no, we haven't been able to hold our own against newer mediums that have been able to come in and remove friction of workflow and prove results or prove outcomes. So now, do I think we have a medium that is valued? I mean, look around. These are the smartest marketers in the world, and IRL media is everywhere. You cannot escape it. We know firsthand what the value of some of these out-of-home boards are down across at the Majestic. I mean, and that's because brands are willing to pay for out-of-home when they can see it themselves and feel it, and so I think it just validates our medium. This is the ultimate arena to validate the medium more than any. I say the same about CES. If once again, you're in a conference room at CES in Las Vegas in January, but yet the entire city is built around out-of-home as an industry, and how spectacular can it be for brands, starting with the Welcome to Fabulous Las Vegas sign. That's just one of the most iconic out-of-home symbols there is. I say the same about Cannes. It's inescapable.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. Since I know the person who was owning the brand for Apple with Steve Jobs for 18 years, and the thing that blew my mind in all my conversation with him is he said that Steve Jobs always said, forget about all the other medium, out of home is the medium that will build Apple. For 18 years, not TV, back then there were no social, but there were other mediums, right? He built the entire Apple brand on out of home. Now, if that's not a marketing genius, I don't know who is, right?
We should put that on a billboard and remind people of that. Tal, is omnichannel solutions the answer to out-of-home share growth? Is that going to help us, or should we remain focused and specific in the out-of-home ad tech?
I think we should all be part of the same media mix. If we're going to continue to have out-of-home special events, out-of-home special pitch, as if it's a different universe, then we will never get a bigger chunk of the budget. Out-of-home has to be top of mind for marketers. It cannot be a niche that somebody remembers at the end of the planning.
Yeah.
So it has to be part of a bigger plan, right?
Yeah. David, are we doing a good enough job of showing clients and agencies what an efficient job we're doing from a data point of view? Should we be displaying data in a more digestible way, in more of a dashboard view, a more digestible way of moving things on?
Yeah, I mean, we should make it as digestible and as visually stunning as possible. We should do it more often. Yeah, we've got work to do. There's no doubt about it. We've got work to do, and you know, I know other agencies. They're going to work it out, and then we're going to have to figure out the next iteration of it. So I don't think you ever are sort of done. I think you are in constant evolution of what your product and your tech stack looks like, and the performance or the visual nature of what it provides.
Yeah, constant optimization, I guess. To sort of start to close things out, one last question for you. If we're sitting up here in 2 or 3 years' time, what would be the most sizable change that would have the biggest impact on out-of-home share and growth?
It comes back to getting out, stop selling OOH and start selling in real life, and really focus on the power of brands in the real world and what that actually means to the brand. It's a cultural shift, it's a mindset shift, it's technology-enabled shift, but I just don't think there's any substitute for brands in the real world. Humans don't think about channels or mediums. They live their life, and how brands can engage with humans in the real world is how brands should be thinking about it. You know, I mean, again, I'll go back to FIFA World Cup and seeing the Norwegians rowing in the middle of Times Square. I don't know if anybody's seen that video, but it's incredible to see, you know, thousands of Norwegians doing their rowing chant. And, you know, that's an IRL experience, and it's surrounded by these brands who get to capture that cultural touch point, that moment. And there's just, you know, I don't know how you could ever undervalue that.
Well, I think if in 5 years we're going to sit here and try to figure out what are we going to do with out of home, then we're not in a good spot. I think marketers should really think about out of home as just part of the experience. Marketing is a storytelling process. It's an emotional process. And you can't do that only within your house. It needs to be a continued experience. That's the thing that needs to change.
David, is it more data analytics? Is it more collaboration? Is it education? Around the whole sector?
Yes, I mean, I'd start with more creativity. Let's start there, flat out. Use the boards, use the placements that you have, do the most creative things that you can do. It's only going to be up there for a month. It's probably going to find itself on social. It is that moment in real life. Take advantage of it. We will work on the analytics behind it. And yes, we have to get much more rigorous and much more prescriptive and causal of the outcomes that it's actually providing, regardless of what those outcomes are that you want to measure. And I think from an industry standpoint, again, universal currency, I think, to me, would be a critical unlock, both for marketers and for advertising agencies and for supply as well. If you're all working off of a shared understanding of what this is, where it is, I think it gives us some comfort in understanding what we're buying.
We're right on time. Jim, Tal, David, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for listening.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.